look at presentations, good presentations and not so good presentations, I came to this realization that a great speech is like a hamburger. Okay, so any of you who follow me online will know I go on about this a lot, because actually a great speech is a hamburger. It's bite-sized, it's tasty, it's a one delicious message with a few frills and some storytelling and some language and body language and all those things that make up a great speech, but it's easy for the audience to take in and easy for them to walk away and remember. That's what we want as a great speech. What most speeches look like, and especially in the corporate world, is that. If you ever sat through a presentation like that, they have so much information and now going to shove it into you, and until they see their times running out. Hang on, I've still got 57 points that I need to share with you, and we overwhelm our audience. They can't digest it, they can't take it in, they're overwhelmed and they remember nothing. So it is far braver, and even with your own stories, it's far braver to take that whole holiday you want to talk about and go, what's the one aspect I'm going to hone in on? And I'm going to tell that story. I'm going to let people be immersed in that situation and really let them discover the message that came out of it. Rather than, and then we got to the airport, okay, hold on, and then there was the tickets. Oh, but of course I haven't told you about the bag. Now let me tell you about what happened in the parking lot. Have you listened to a story like that? It's exhausting, and our brain wants to do that because we're like, I'd hate for you to miss out on any of the details. Well, what I'm going to tell you today is, please never ruin a good story with the facts. Okay, never ruin a good story with the facts. Rather take them down the simplest path to your message so that they remember what you've said. Okay, so let's look at how we write a hamburger speech, and it's very simple, and you already know this, but we sometimes forget to do it. If you're wanting to create the hamburger speech, the first thing you want is that killer introduction. Remember I said powerful opening, powerful closing. You have got 30 seconds when you're speaking to make your audience care. 30 seconds for them to sit up and go, I need to listen to this. Whether it's a 2-minute speech or a 2-hour lecture, if you don't grab their attention in the first 30 seconds, they've got other things to think about. So ways we do this, and Maxime, I mean, you really did it beautifully today, taking us into the toilet, using your notes. We were listening. We were like, okay, take us on this journey. So again, that's that unique, out the box, let me grab their attention in my way. You can ask a yes or no question. So who here has ever been afraid of the future or something like that? Everyone's going to say yes to that question. They're also going to care about that question because maybe you've got an answer for them. So yes or no questions are great ways to have that killer introduction, to make them care about what's coming next and make them curious about what's coming next. Because a curious audience is a listening audience. Some people like to start straight in with a story. So you could paint a picture, throw them straight into a setting so they're like right there wanting to know what happens. Other people like to use a famous quote. Provisor here. Please don't use famous quotes for the sake of letting someone else's powerful words do the work for you. This is a lesson I learned from my mentor. If you are going to use a quote, rather than saying, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. We're like, really, I've heard that so many times. But if you said, growing up, whenever I used to visit my grandmother, and I would go to the fridge to get a glass of water, she had this quote that I would see, and it always stuck with me. It said, be the change you want to see in the world. Can you see the difference? So only use the quote if you can put yourself into why that quote matters to you and where it came from. Okay, so killer introduction, 30 seconds. Look at the way you're starting your speeches. Please don't waste it on thank you, I'm so grateful to be here, so wonderful. If you need to do protocol, do it after you've got our attention. Are we good with doing killer introductions? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. The next piece, this is where we map out the important stuff, and that is the body of our speech. I think my clicker is not wanting to speak to me. Let's see. I'll let Justine take the wheel, or maybe it's not talking. The middle of our speech is an easy to follow body. Okay, so here, and depending, we might be doing a technical topic, or you might be telling a story, the same principle applies. 3 to 5 points. Your audience cannot take in more than that. And I know you've sat in a speech where someone says, I'm going to share my 15-point plan. Your brain switches off. 3 to 5 points with stories or analogies to help them see and understand it. Probably your most powerful tool in speech giving is finding an analogy. If you don't have a personal story, find an analogy to explain what you're talking about. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, we had a young gentleman do an icebreaker speech, and he stood up and he said, my life is like an Oreo cookie. Would you agree that that's a killer introduction? You're like, how on earth is your life like an Oreo cookie? He then explained that he'd started his life in the rural, gritty, chocolatey backwaters of the Transkei. And he spoke about his childhood, so that was his first point. He then went into how he had a vanilla, cushy change of life at 12 when he got adopted by a white family, vanilla family, living in Constantia. And he spoke about this easy childhood at a private school. And now in his mid-20s, he'd gone back to his chocolatey roots, and he was living in Guguletu, starting a startup business. I've never forgotten that speech, and I never heard that speech. Someone else heard that speech. And a week later, they told me his story, and I'm telling you that story 10 years later. That's the power of analogy. Simple point, all I have to remember is an Oreo cookie. So look at how you can make the body of your content easy to follow. Take out the points that are cluttering things so that your audience can see what you're saying, not have to think about what you're saying. So that's short sentences, simple descriptions, analogies, similes, metaphors. Okay, and then last but not least, you want a powerful conclusion. Now you know what's great about this bun? That was one bun. Someone's cut it in half. So all you have to do as a speaker when you get to your conclusion is look at your killer introduction and go, how can I tie back to how I started but show a change?